let me introduce you to Brian. This go-getter has his own small shop right here on the beach. Unfortunately, Brian's store doesn't get many customers, and he thinks he knows why. He's upset there's too much competition, and we think he might be onto something. So instead of working on the beach, Brian started selling this gimmicky marijuana leaf t-shirt at dispensaries up and down the West Coast. Brian is living the American dream. This story sounds suspiciously similar to that of Consumer Guide, Strategies for Nintendo Games. Seeing how crowded the newsstand was at the time, the publisher behind Consumer Guide made the conscious decision to avoid the head-to-head face-off with GamePro and Electronic Gaming Monthly, and instead hit school book fairs. Despite looking exactly like a traditional magazine, Consumer Guide, Strategies for Nintendo Games, was passed off as a book. As such, the 1989 guide found its way next to The Manly Art of Knitting and Anybody Can Be Cool, but Awesome Takes Practice, with Consumer Guide being the only book that's even remotely video game related. It's easy to see why this magazine in disguise found its way into so many kids' homes. Similar to Game Players, the layout was dull and the writing was intended to hype the game, no matter how bad it was. Beyond describing the story, Strategies for Nintendo Games offered, strategies for Nintendo games. Some of these tips came in the form of passwords and cheat codes, while others were suggestions on how to improve play. The write-ups were bad, and the tips weren't very useful. But what were you gonna do? Buy a book called Mommy Drinks Because You're Bad? Jesus, is that a real book? That sounds like wildly inappropriate subject matter for a school book fair. Seeing the popularity of the first guide, Consumer Guide released a string of follow-ups, including Hot Tips for the Coolest Nintendo Games, More Strategies for Nintendo Games, Nintendo Fun, the book for beginners, The Winner's Guide to Nintendo, Winning at Nintendo, and Winning Tips for Nintendo, all of which seem specifically geared for search engine optimization. I'm not sure what happened to Consumer Guide. I assume they went out of business the moment kids stopped reading. I suppose I could have done more research and came up with a satisfying conclusion to this episode, but that doesn't really sound like something I would do. So instead I'm going to end with Brian letting us know what he thinks of his newfound fortune. Hey, don't leave now! We're going to be talking about different magazines every single day between now and Christmas. That's 29 episodes looking back at classic game magazines. So don't forget to subscribe and check out those other videos. See you tomorrow!